Welcome back to the Alien Spaceship Talk Show podcast. And in case you're just joining us, you're listening to the Alien Spaceship Talk Show podcast with Emmy, Hikins, and Trevor.
Throwing paint on buildings and on works of art and stuff, and other things that can also break the law. And the suffragettes, as they became known, in fact, the reason they became suffragettes was because the newspapers at the time rather mocked the group who were doing this. Yeah. And of course, it was women's suffrage. And it's a bit like the letters E-double-T-E, people put on the end of a name sometimes. There's a bit of sarcasm. All these, these little people doing this, suffragettes. That's where that came from. So anyway, they actually were quite militant. They indulged in lots of window smashing, which is quite a thing to be doing in significant buildings. And other things, they disrupted important meetings where they could. And we see that now sometimes, don't we? We see somebody rushing on the stage in a political meeting or something like that. Or even on a football pitch, you get people rushing on to protest about this, that or the other. Well, they did lots of that. Some of them were jailed because they also committed arson. They set fire to buildings, but never, I believe, with the intention of killing anybody. They were empty buildings they chose, but they still committed what is a very serious offence. And when some of them went to prison, they went on hunger strike. So you can see the depth of feeling that these women had in their quest to get what should have been rightfully theirs, the right to vote. And this went on. In fact, one of the saddest incidents was in 1913, when a lady by the name, I think, of Emily Davison, one of the suffragettes, she went to the Epsom Derby, which was still running then, the Epsom Derby, the horse race. She ran on to the racetrack in the middle of a race, and actually she stepped effectively in front of the king's horse. So presumably she deliberately went in front of the king's horse, as it was then. Well, 4 days later she died, and much to the distress of her fellow suffragettes. But that was how strongly the feeling was to get the right to vote for women. Then came the First World War in 1914 to 18. So, excuse me, the women generally, they agreed to pause their protests. It still went on behind the scenes, but basically when the men went off to war, the women took on the jobs of the men, which of course never happened before that. They were in the workplace, in the factories, on the farms, everywhere where men were, the women took over. And actually, in doing that, they changed the view of society about women and their role. That, they were far more, sounds awfully patronising now, but they were far more capable than they were ever thought to be. It made a lot of progress for them. So and in one area that they also did, they joined and played sports, which they never really had in some sports before, for example, football. So the war ended, the men came, some of the men came back, took on the jobs again, and the women resumed their protests, as well as carrying on their love of things like playing football and other games too. Well, I think the government of the day were sufficiently impressed. In 1918, they passed an act, I think the Representation of the People's Act, which gave some women the right to vote. So it was a big step forward, but you had to be, if you were a woman, you had to be 30 or above, and you had to be a householder, which was probably quite unusual then for women to be a householder, or be married to one. So some women had the vote, but of course it still wasn't achieving what the suffragettes and suffragists wanted. But it took another 10 years, 1928, when they were finally given under the Women's Suffrage Act, something like that, or the Equal Suffrage Act. The government passed that, which gave women over 21 the right to vote, equal suffrage, the same rights as men. So it's only 7 years ago. No, less than that. isn't it? 1928, it's actually 97 years ago where women finally got the right to vote. And interestingly, I think the right to vote down to 18 was I think it was in the early 1970s. I don't remember that one. I didn't look that one up, but it's only that recently gone. I mean, that's 50 years ago, I guess, that women and men over 18 can vote as well. So ultimately, their protests were successful. It took over 28, 30 years to achieve this with all sorts of protests and militancy in the process. So to me, it begs the question, which I will put to you. Is it right, do you think, if an individual or a group want to protest at trying to achieve a right or something like that, is it right to break the law, to have civil disobedience, as we have seen with recent?
The Alien Spaceship Talk Show podcast is looking for sponsors. If you're a company out there looking to spread the word about the products and services you provide, please get in touch with Deepstuff Radio Podcast on info@deepstuffrecords.com, or to use the contact form on our website to contact us, please visit radio.deepstuffrecords.com. Also, if you're looking to get involved on the Alien Spaceship Talk Show podcast, reach out via our Deepstuff Radio Facebook page. Thank you.